Hello, welcome to Life Matters. I'm your host, Brendan O'Connell. Well, we have a very distinguished guest today, Dr. Michael New, who got a PhD from Stanford, but his biggest claim to fame is he went to high school where the quarterback from the Miami Dolphins was Dan Marino, played football. And Michael, welcome to the show today. There are some current topics that need to be discussed, and one is very important. There's going to be a vote in November that has to do with the pro-life world. Can you tell us a little bit of the background and then what's happened? Something happened in August, I know, and now in November we're going to have a...
Yes, sure. That pro-lifers achieved a great victory, last June with the Dobbs decision, and we've been able to pass good protected pro-life laws. The other side is pushing back and trying to use direct democracy to put abortion rights in state constitutions. So they did this in California. They did this in Vermont. That was not surprising. These are very liberal states. They did it in Michigan as well, which is a purplish state. Usually goes Democrat, but Republicans are competitive. Now they're going to Ohio. And in November, there's going to be an election on what's known as Issue 1. And Issue 1 would place abortion rights directly in the state constitution. So this is something that pro-lifers are rallying hard against. We really want to win Ohio. It's one thing when the other side wins liberal states, but we don't want our opponents to win in a conservative state. This is a state that Donald Trump carried twice. It's a state that's trending more conservative. It's a state with a lot of good pro-life laws that might be jeopardized. And so some background, there were some efforts to try to make it harder for this initiative to pass. In August, there was a vote that would raise the vote threshold to amend the state constitution from 50% to 60%, to make it a little harder for out-of-state interests and outside millionaires to, amend the state constitution. That failed. So here we are facing an election in November. Again, our opponents are trying to put legal abortion in Ohio state constitution. And what they're proposing is very radical. It would very likely legalize abortion throughout all 9 months of pregnancy, make it difficult to protect children even very late in gestation. It would very likely eliminate Ohio's pro-life parental involvement law. It would very likely eliminate the waiting period. It might require the Medicaid program, Ohio's Medicaid program, to cover elective abortions. That would be taxpayer funding for abortion in Ohio. This is something pro-lifers really need to invest heavily in to stop. We don't want to see abortion legal in Ohio or made more legal. We don't want these laws to be more permissive, and we don't want the other side to achieve a victory in a conservative state.
Well, they seem to, the other side, and I guess this is the 20 years that I've been doing this show, it seems like the other side just way outspends us. And I don't know where they get their money, but they outspend us a tremendous amount. Is that going to be the case in Ohio, too?
Well, one thing we do know is that abortion is a multi-billion-dollar industry. There's a lot of money in the abortion industry. Sadly, unborn children don't pay pro-lifers to protect them. So we're often at a funding disadvantage. And money is important in direct democracy campaigns. I'm not going to lie, that does put us at a disadvantage, but it's not, insurmountable. Groups who oppose Issue 1, are raising money. The various Catholic dioceses have made some substantial donations. I would encourage your viewers to go on the website and even consider a donation yourself. Even small donations are welcome and appreciated. Money is important, but it's not everything. If the pro-life side is able to raise enough to make good arguments and get the message out, this is winnable. I think we have our work cut out for us. It's not going to be easy, but it is winnable. I don't ever believe in despair.
Well, can you tell us what are the arguments that the pro-aborts are using to try to sell it to the Ohio people, and what are the arguments that the pro-life people are doing to sell it to the Ohio people?
Well, the pro-aborts, want to see abortion legal. But one thing that they're doing is they're just trying to play up, hard case scenarios involving, pregnancies where a woman's raped, or pregnancies where there's a severe fetal deformity, or they're trying to come up with anecdotes where a pregnant woman couldn't get the health care she needed because of a pro-life law that was in place. And I think that's just disingenuous and misleading. I mean, I think that it's very clear that, you don't have to wait. We want pregnant women first to get whatever health care they need. You don't have to wait till someone's death is imminent to give them health care if a woman's pregnant. In situations involving, rape and fetal deformity, are very rare. And even in those situations, nobody has any control over the circumstances surrounding their conception. All life is valuable. All life is precious. Those are tough scenarios, but I think it's important that, life to be protected. The pro-life side, we're really kind of making a key argument on, trying to stop late-term abortions. Create Equal just released an ad that was, I thought, very powerful on that topic. We're trying to basically hit very hard parental rights. Ohio has a parental involvement law requiring that minor girls, tell their parents before they get an abortion. That's just common sense. There's a good chance if this passes, that would go by the wayside. And also, this allows, other things for all the minors. There's questions about, can minors get contraception without their parents' knowledge? Can they be sterilized without their parents' knowledge? Can they get transgender treatments without their parents' knowledge? So the one key argument that pro-lifers are making are that we need to strengthen parents' rights, and this issue one would undermine parents' rights.
And can I ask you, the abortion pill is now about 50% of all abortions. Would that be an argument for the pro-life side, that you don't know if your daughter is ordering an abortion pill or not?
Sure. I mean, I think that if abortion is very deregulated in Ohio, which issue one would do, it'd be possible for minor girls to obtain not only surgical abortions but chemical abortions. All abortions are fatal to unborn children. But chemical abortions do pose some unique risks to women, especially if they're done unsupervised. If a woman has an ectopic pregnancy and obtains chemical abortion, that can be fatal. If she's further along in gestation, she realizes that she's a chemical abortion. That could pose some very serious health consequences. So, sure, I think that, concerns about chemical abortion pills being mailed to minor girls in Ohio, that's certainly a legitimate point to be made here.
Mm-hmm. I'd like to now switch over to Donald Trump made some comments about a timeline, 6 weeks, and he the really kind of unclear remarks, but saying it would be awful, terrible, and we really don't know. I mean, we in the pro-life movement feel that he did some great things during his 4 years in the presidency. But now he's blaming DeSantis for Florida's law, I guess, in 6 weeks. And for our viewers to know and listeners to know, most surgical abortions and chemical abortions happen between 5 weeks and 12 weeks, roughly. The vast majority of abortions occur during that period. What do you make of Donald Trump's remarks and DeSantis's and some of these other politicians who are barking back at Trump's remarks in that regard?
First, I do agree. President Trump did a lot of good for pro-lifers, and we should acknowledge and appreciate that. His judicial nominations were excellent. It's because of Neil Gorsuch and Amy Coney Barrett and Brett Kavanaugh that we got Roe v. Wade overturned. We can now protect preborn children, and in 14 states, preborn children are protected. So it's important to give credits due. That said, his statements about the 6-week abortion limit were very disappointing. Ron DeSantis, as governor, signed a bill that would protect preborn children after 6 weeks gestation, after a fetal heartbeat could be detected. President Trump called that a terrible thing, a terrible mistake. It wasn't a terrible thing. Protecting preborn children isn't terrible. It's a great thing. Protecting people from abortion violence is something that Ron DeSantis and other pro-life governors should be commended for. So we've seen a lot of good coming from these heartbeat bills. The Florida law, I don't think has taken effect due to legal challenges. But Texas, actually had a heartbeat law that took effect even before the Dobbs decision. Their law took effect September of 2021. And we have some interesting birth data from Texas that being 7 months later, we saw a lot of children being born in Texas. In fact, record numbers. Based on the increase in birth numbers, we can show that the Texas heartbeat law saved about 1,000 children every month from abortion. So my study shows that. A study that appeared in the Journal of the American Medical Association shows that you have more people protected, more children being born. That's certainly a great thing. That is under no circumstances a terrible thing.
Well, haven't they, just like the people in Texas, gone to Las Cruces, New Mexico to have an abortion, which is right on the border of Texas?
Laws aren't magical. I mean, laws are circumvented. People get around laws all the time. People break laws, but that doesn't mean the law is not doing any good. I mean, one thing that I really want to do with my own research was really see the impact of this Texas law. The problem with tracking abortions is it's tough. Abortion numbers went down in Texas, but they went up in New Mexico. They may have gone up in Louisiana, other states. So it's hard to track. Did the out-of-state increase exceed or equal the in-state decline? But the one thing I did was look at children being born, births. Abortions are hard to count. Children are pretty easy to count. Children are hard to miss. So if after a pro-life law takes effect, if 7 months later you see a lot more children being born, I think that's very powerful statistical evidence that the pro-life law is having an impact. So again, if you see more children being born in Texas, which you do, that shows the Heartbeat Act is having a positive impact. I also would add that in 2022, in percentage terms, Texas had the largest birth rate increase of any state in the country. I think births increased by about 4.7%. Why? They're the first state to start enforcing the strong pro-life law.
Mm-hmm. Have you seen that in any other states? Have you had enough time to analyze the data in any other states?
Unfortunately, no. Essentially, Texas was really in the lead with this Heartbeat Act because of the Dobbs decision. That came down June of 2022. It's something I'm going to look at. Maybe try to get a paper out before the March for Life in January 2024. Some states just are not very quick about making birth data available. So there is data out there. On a future episode of Life Matters, please have me on. I hope to discuss the good news from other states. But right now, the only state where you really saw data from is Texas, but it's good data. It does show very clearly birth numbers did go up months after the Heartbeat Act took effect.
Would critics say about the birth going up that it's just a bunch of people streaming over the border who have children, mostly Central and South Americans, coming into Texas?
That's a possibility, but keep in mind, immigration didn't start as a problem in 2022. There have been border control problems in Texas for a long time. Ever since Biden took over, I'm not an expert in immigration, but he seemed to relax a lot of the Trump-era rules that sort of put the brakes on illegal immigration. So illegal immigration was a problem in 2021, but we didn't see the big birth increase there. We did see the big birth increase in 2022. Why? I think it's the Heartbeat Act. There may be other things at play. It may not just be the Heartbeat Act. The other thing I'll say is that we see the largest birth increases in those Texas counties far away from out-of-state abortion facilities. So we didn't necessarily see, a big birth increase in maybe El Paso, Texas, which is close to New Mexico. We saw bigger birth increases in kind of inland counties far away from these out-of-state facilities. So I think that's additional evidence that these laws are having an impact.
James Bopp Jr., who's a well-known pro-life attorney who's fought not only in Indiana for pro-life laws, but also nationally, he presented to Mass Citizens for Life in a Zoom call last week that we shouldn't use 15 weeks or 6 weeks, or in other words, a definitive date from the time of supposed conception, but rather we should use things like let's reduce the amount of abortions that are affiliated with different types of issues like rape or incest. bringing the issue rather than the timeline as a way to win for the pro-life movement. What do you think of that?
Well, I respect Jim Bopp a great deal. He's done a lot of good work for National Right to Life and other pro-life groups. I have not considered this proposal super carefully, but I'm a little bit skeptical because at the end of the day, if we're going to try to limit abortion for different reasons, we don't really know in all cases why women are having abortions, or they may claim different reasons than the actual reason. With the gestational limit, you can to some degree measure or calculate the gestational age of a child. And if you protect children after a certain point, those children are legally protected. And it's a starting point. If you're just saying fewer abortions in such and such circumstance, women aren't necessarily going to be forthright about, what circumstances they're having this abortion in. So it just strikes me as a little bit hard to enforce. Again, Jim's a very smart man, and he may have, given this more and more thought than I'm giving him credit for. But I think the gestational age limits are a good start. I mean, a lot of European countries have them. I think it just incrementally helps out pro-lifers. I think that people will kind of realize that these limits are a bit arbitrary. There's really no good reason why a child one day after 12 weeks should be protected, but one day before shouldn't be. So I think it just allows us to make some strong arguments, and I think that'll allow for kind of bigger, bolder, better protections later on.
Okay. Now, I wanted to switch over and ask you about the Guttmacher Institute. They seem to have abortion statistics that historically are more inclusive than the Centers for Disease Control. And Mildred Jefferson would always admonish me in saying, pregnancy is not a disease. But what do you make of the Guttmacher 2023 statistics?
Yeah, I guess earlier in September, they released some, and to be clear, they released estimates for abortion in 2023. And they compared the first 6 months of 2023 to the first 6 months of 2020. And they claimed that between 2020 and 2023, abortions went up by almost 10%, which is kind of hard to believe considering in 2023, we do have 14, 15 states that are actually protecting preborn children. Now, I'm kind of skeptical of this for a variety of reasons. First off, Guttmacher made clear these are just estimates. They didn't, contact all abortion facilities. They did a sample. And when you get a sample, it can be skewed. So that's one thing. Secondly, they did provide what they call confidence intervals. So in some cases, they couldn't survey every facility, so the confidence interval. And some of these confidence intervals are quite large. I think like in Georgia, the upper estimate is like 80% higher than the lower estimate. That's a pretty big gap. In Florida, the upper estimate's 10,000 more abortions than the lower estimate. So there's a lot of variation in their numbers that causes some questions about their reliability and accuracy. I'd also say that, the fact that abortion numbers are going up in certain liberal parts of the country is not necessarily due to women from conservative states getting abortions in liberal states. Sometimes it's just that liberal states are making their policies more permissive. In the past 5 or 6 years, we've seen 3 states start to cover abortion through the state Medicaid program. Illinois, Rhode Island, Maine. That's probably pushing abortion numbers up in these states. Illinois repealed their parental involvement law. Massachusetts, where you're at, weakened their parental involvement law. I'll also say that, the Biden administration has done certain things to make chemical abortion pills more accessible. During the pandemic, they said a woman could get a chemical abortion pill without an in-person medical exam. Even after the pandemic, the Biden administration, FDA, continued, I think, a very unwise, foolish, and reckless policy. So there's some policy things that are pushing abortion numbers up. The pro-life laws we put in effect are doing good. We saw the data in Texas. I think we have data from other states kind of showing similar things. So yeah, we shouldn't despair. I don't think this data is reliable. And even if it is, it still doesn't discount the fact that pro-life laws are saving thousands of lives everywhere.
Mm-hmm. Well, now what about in Massachusetts here, the female governor almost immediately said, well, we're going to buy $1 million worth of Mifeprex so that we can hand it out for those people that can't get Mifeprex. And that's based on, I believe, the lawsuit that's occurring in another part of the country that
Yeah.
might eliminate Mifeprex. What can you say about that?
Well, it's interesting. I want to tip my hat to the people at Alliance Defending Freedom. They have sued about, regulations involving chemical abortion drugs. And the history behind chemical abortion drugs is interesting. Their FDA approval occurred during the Clinton administration. It occurred in 2000, the last full year of the Clinton presidency. It was rushed through. The procedure used to approve the chemical abortion pill was typically used for only under situations where, you're trying to approve. It was fast tracked under kind of a procedure that's typically only used for life-saving drugs. Pregnancy, in most circumstances, is not life-threatening. So it was really pretty clear the FDA kind of approved the chemical abortion pill inappropriately. And again, this is done by the FDA. There were no legislation, no testimony, no hearings. I think if they had heard what happened to European countries and women who suffered, psychologically and physically from these chemical abortion drugs, it would have worked out differently. And, the Alliance Defending Freedom sued. They didn't get the chemical abortion pill off the market, but they did restore some of the original safeguards, which is important. We'll see what happens. I think the lawsuit's ongoing. I'm not currently sure where it does stand, but I do think that it has highlighted some of the problems with the original approval and some of the health risks involved with chemical abortion. So I do think the good folks at Alliance Defending Freedom did a good job and should be, receive our applause and our support for what they did.
Do you think the Comstock Act can eliminate the pushing Mifeprex across state lines?
That's a very interesting question. I mean, Comstock laws were, enacted, a good while ago to stop, sexually oriented pornographic materials from, being sent through the mail. And that did include abortifacients and abortion pills. Obviously, the Comstock Acts were passed many, many years ago, but they are still on the books. I think the lawsuits are interesting. I'm not a lawyer. I don't like to speculate on how any lawsuit might turn out, but I think it is an interesting legal strategy. Some groups are working on it. I wish them well.
Right. I know that in my readings, the Comstock, I think it was in the 1860s or 70s, and so it was about 150 years old. And that it has been nibbled at the edges, but if it comes to a head here, I think there'll be a huge legal battle if the Comstock Act is upheld. And any other things in the pro-life world that you think should be noted at this juncture?
I just think that, Ohio, there's the March for Life taking place there. I guess October 5th or 6th, whatever that Friday is. I encourage people to go and support that effort. So I think that's always interesting. My good friend Teresa McCovennick is running for president as a pro-life Democrat. She's challenging Joe Biden in the Democratic presidential primaries, the first pro-life woman to try to get the Democratic Party's presidential nomination since 1976. So she's got some media coverage, and hopefully she'll be a positive impact on this debate. She wants to run pro-life TV commercials with any money she might be able to raise. So I've been doing a little bit to help her with that. And 40 Years for Life kicked off yesterday. I'm helping to run the Washington, D.C. campaign. We were very lucky. Abby Johnson came by today. I was teaching, so I did not get a chance to see Abby in person, but she did prance on the Planned Parenthood and sent a picture. So I have that on my Twitter feed. So, if you work on pro-life issues and you're bored, it's your own fault. Political stuff and street level activism, there's plenty to do.
I see. Well, thank you for doing that out in front of the Planned Parenthood in Washington, D.C. I was there with you one day when I got down to D.C. early for a 1:15 forum meeting. Well, Michael, thank you so much.
That group doesn't exist.
What's that?
It's a secret.
Oh, yeah, right. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show today and making time. We really appreciate it on short notice. And folks, we hope you enjoyed and learned a lot about the show and found it to be unique, informative, content-rich, truthful, and thought-provoking. Thanks for watching and listening. My name's Brendan O'Connell, your friend for life.